Okay, you're going to have 10 questions on your test. There'll be 15 answer blanks, meaning there might be one where you have to give, find the value of x and y, or the complement and the supplement. What we did not do is give you a triangle and say, tell me all 6 trig functions, because that takes a long time. If you guys can do 1 or 2 of them, you can do all 6. So what we did was we gave you a triangle and said, here, find these 2 trig functions, or find these 2, or something like that. So you won't have to find all 6 for any specific question, but you should be able to know how to. So in a case like these 3, I'm not going to go through all of the answers because I have them all uploaded on the answer sheet, but I want to get through the process. If you guys notice, this is my theta. In regards to theta, what is 4? 4 is the adjacent side, right? The side longest across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. So here's my hypotenuse. So I have to find my opposite side. That's a leg, right? So we've got to find the leg of this triangle. So the way we would do that is we would use our Pythagorean theorem. We have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a could be either a or 4, doesn't matter. I'm just going to leave it as a squared plus 4 squared equals the square root of 38 squared. So I have a squared plus 16. Guys, when you square a square root, it just crosses out, right? So equals 38. So a squared plus 16 equals 38. I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. A squared equals 22. Take the square root, and a equals the square root of 22. So in this case, my opposite side is the square root of 22. My adjacent side is the 4, and my hypotenuse is the square root of 38. Now you want to always, always, always simplify as much as you can. So from this point, you guys should be able to find all 6 trig functions. Right? If I need to remind you, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. And cotangent is adjacent over opposite. So those are our 6 trig functions. So tomorrow on the test, you'll have to do this part, which I just did here, to find all 3 sides, and then I'm going to ask you for 2 of the trig functions. If you end up with your trig function is 4 over root 38, can I leave my answer like that? Yes or no? Yes. So I have to say, okay, root 38 over root 38. So this becomes 4 root 38 over 38. Is that done? Is that simplified?
No.
No, because 2 goes into 4 and 2 goes into 38. So if you had to, if this was your answer for whatever, I'm not saying it is, make sure that your radical is fully simplified and make sure that the whole numbers on the outside are fully simplified. I will take off points if everything is not fully simplified. So just make sure. If you get a big radical and you guys are like, I don't know if 209 breaks down. Well, use your perfect squares. Use 4. Try to divide by 4. Try to divide by 9. Try to divide by 16 to make it smaller. But you have calculators, so don't tell me you guys can't do it. All right. So if I look at the next one, all right, I have my theta right here. This is my adjacent side. This is my hypotenuse. So again, I'm looking for a leg. So if I use my Pythagorean theorem, I have a squared plus 3 squared equals 6 squared. A squared plus 9 equals 36. Subtract 9 from both sides, and I get a squared equals 27. So I take the square root, and I get a equals the square root of 27. Is that simplified, ladies and gents? Square root of 27, is that simplified?
No.
No, that's the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. So what you should have here for your opposite side should be 3 root 3. So opposite would be 3 root 3. Adjacent would be 3. And your hypotenuse is 6. And then you would use those 3 sides to find whatever trig functions I asked you to. But everything has to be simplified. Has to be simplified. Everybody with me on that? Yes. Pablo, no worries.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So
Yeah, sure.
Miss Meadows, I have a question. So say it's like square root 2 over square root 38. How do you get that into simplest, like...
Okay, so like the square root of 2 over the square root of 38, right?
Yeah.
So we can't have square root of 38, so we'd rationalize here. And we would get, what's 38 times 2? 76?
Yeah, 76.
Okay, over 38. And then we have to see if 76 breaks down. So in your calculator, I would just do this. 76 divided by 2 is 38, right? Divided by 2 again is 19. Agreed?
Yeah.
So this would break into 2 radical 19 over 38. And then you can simplify there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No problem. So like in this case, guys, right? This is adjacent again. This is my hypotenuse again. I'm looking for the opposite side, which happens to be a leg. So you would say a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a squared plus 5 squared equals 5 root 2 squared. All right. Now the reason I wanted to do this example is because this 2 goes to both the 5 and the radical. So you have a squared plus 25 equals 25 times 2. A squared plus 25 equals 50. Subtract 25 from both sides. So a squared equals 25. So a in this case is 25. So your opposite is 5, sorry. A equals 5. So this opposite side is 5. So you would say, okay, my opposite side is 5. My adjacent side is 5. My hypotenuse is 5 radical 2. Then use that information to find whatever trig function that I asked you to on the test. Now again, on the test review answers, that I'll pull them up at the end, I did work everything out so you guys can check. But then if you get a question like this, which you will, you'll get a question like this, and it's going to say, here's this information, tell me something about the trig functions below. Not going to be all of them, it'll just be 1 or 2. But when I give you that cotangent is 6, this means 6 over 1, it's a whole number. What is cotangent? It's adjacent over what? Over opposite, right? So in order to find trig functions, you need the opposite side, you need the adjacent side, and you need the hypotenuse. Well, how would I figure out what the hypotenuse is? You would use the Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Opposite and adjacent are legs, so 1 squared plus 36 squared equals c squared. Just kidding, 6 squared. 1 plus 36. So I have 37 equals c squared. So the square root of 37 is your hypotenuse. And then you would use that information to answer any of these trig functions. If I said, what's the sign? You would tell me opposite over hypotenuse. So it would be 1 over root 37. Can I leave it like that? No, you'd have to rationalize. So it would become root 37 over 37. Is everybody with me? Understanding what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm going to do extra help after. If you need me to go through after you find the 3 sides and go through all 6 trig functions, I'll do that. I just want to make sure I hit on everything for the test tomorrow. In this case, secant. What is secant? Secant goes with what? Sine or cosine? Cosine. So this is going to be hypotenuse over adjacent. So the 3 pieces I need are opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. The 2 pieces they gave me are 15 for hypotenuse, 4 for the adjacent. So in this case, guys, I'm looking for a leg. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared plus 4 squared equals 15 squared. A squared plus 16 equals 225. If I subtract 16 from both sides, a squared equals 209. So my opposite side would be the square root of 209. And you would just use those three values to find whatever trig function that they're asking you about. You guys with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Scooting along. All right. You will. Every single version of every single test is going to have a question just like this. It's either going to have a 30, 60, 90 or a 45, 45, 90. You will be given the unit circle at the top of your test just like you were for your quiz. So it should be super easy for you guys to do because we've gone over these a million trillion times. All right. This is a 30, 60, 90. The angle they gave me, 30 degrees, is on the unit circle. Can you look real quick on the unit circle and tell me, please, what the ordered pair is at 30 degrees? Okay, so I have the square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. Now, when we talk about our trig functions, guys, and the angle that they're talking about is on the unit circle, we can remember that sine is the y value. Cosine is the x value. Tangent is y over x. This only works if it's something on the unit circle, which is what I'm going to give you here. So cosecant would be 1 over y. Secant would be 1 over x. And cotangent would be x over y. All right, that works when the angle is on the unit circle. And I'm going to give you the unit circle. But right here, it says exact value. That means no decimals. That means I'm going to have a radical in my answer, and that's okay. That's what we want.
Wait, you said you're giving us...
Yep, it's going to be the first thing on your test. First image that's up there.
And how many questions are on, like, that we have to use the unit circle?
I have 2 or 3. Some people might refer to it more than others. But in this case, guys, somebody asked me last period, well, does it matter if I find x or r first? It doesn't matter. What you need to understand is the relationship. X in this case is opposite, and r is the hypotenuse. So you're going to use 2 trig functions. If you're going to find the opposite side first, I'm going to use tangent because tangent uses opposite and adjacent. So if I were going to do this, I would set this up and I would say tangent of 30 equals opposite over adjacent, right? Now, if I just went ahead and solved this, I cross-multiplied and I said 39 times the tangent of 30, I'd get a decimal answer, but I don't want a decimal. So this is where you go back to your unit circle. I've already found out what the ordered pair was. To find the tangent at this value, I would take the y, which is 1/2, and divide it by the x, which is root 3 over 2. So 1/2 times 2 over root 3. Those cancel out. Then I'm going to rationalize. So the tangent in this case is root 3 over 3. You guys with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Miss Meadows?
Uh-huh. So in this case, guys, I'm going to replace tangent of 30 with root 3 over 3 equals x over 39. Now we're going to cross multiply. 3x equals 39 times the square root of 3. Divide both sides by 3. And x equals 13 root 3. Now, Pablo, if you did this part, just like you just said in your calculator, and you literally said 39 times the tangent of 30, you'll get a decimal. If you then in your calculator hit 13 times the square root of 3, you'll get the same decimal. So you can check your work that way. But if you give me a decimal answer, I'm going to mark it wrong.
All right, but how'd you get root 3 over 3?
I did the tangent using the ordered pair of 30 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So now if I'm going to try and find the hypotenuse, and I have my adjacent side, then I would say cosine of 30 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So in this point, you could cross multiply and then divide and you get a decimal answer, and that's okay because you can check with that, but I don't want that right now. Cosine is what value when the angle is on the unit circle? Cosine's the x value. So I'm going to replace cosine 30 with root 3 over 2. So I'm going to say root 3 over 2 equals 39 over r. Cross multiply. What's 39 times 2? 78 equals r times the square root of 3. Divide both sides by the square root of 3. And I have to rationalize. So I get r equals 78 root 3 over 3. Is that completely simplified? Let me give you hints. Some of you are like, I don't know. Guys, what's 7 plus 8? 15, right? Does 3 go into 15? Yes, then that means 3 goes into 78. So everybody has a calculator that you're allowed to use. How many times does 3 go into 78? 26 times. So r equals 26 root 3. And again, if you work it out at this stage right here, like I showed you how to cross multiply, get a decimal answer, it will be the same as 26 times the square root of 3 in the decimal form. But I have to have these answers when it says exact value. All right. Coming across to these word problems. All right. This word problem is not going to work out because I just randomly put 74 and it's going to give you a decimal answer. But you guys are fine with angle of elevation and stuff like that. What I want you to write down, and I put this on the answer sheet, is I want you to think about like the distance when it says like from base to base, or from the park bench to the base of the building, or from, I'm just going to say from here to there. When it talks about the distance from here to there, they're talking about the horizontal side of a triangle, of a right triangle. All right, this is good for you guys to kind of get in your brain. When they're talking about height, when they say how tall is the tree, is the apartment building, is whatever. When they talk about the height, they're talking about the vertical distance, the vertical part of the right triangle. And then when they talk about, say, like a ladder leaning against something, a conveyor belt that takes something to the top of a roof. Think about an escalator, something like that, that has like a slanted incline. That's the hypotenuse that they're talking about. Hypotenuse. Because we're talking, all of these are going to be about right triangles. Okay? We're always going to draw a right triangle when we get these word problems. So you need to understand where the numbers go that they're talking about. And on this question, we need to talk about what really the angle of elevation and depression is. All right? I'm going to show you a little thing this is how I want you to calculate it. This is how I want you to look at it. If I'm talking about right triangles, so I told you guys right now, draw a right triangle. Doesn't matter if you draw it this way or if you draw it the other way. I always draw it this way. I don't know why. But it says a ladder is leaning against the side of a 3-story house. It does not matter how tall the house is right now, but if the ladder is leaning against it, what side is the ladder? The vertical, the horizontal, or the hypotenuse?
Hypotenuse.
That's the hypotenuse, okay? So ladder leaning against. Now, they're talking right here about the angle of depression. Whenever they say angle of depression, I want you guys to think 90 minus. Because there's a roofer or somebody standing up here, and he's looking like this. Technically, when they said the angle of depression, it's right here. What do they tell you the angle of depression is? What do they tell you it is right there? 58 degrees. Is that really our theta? Is 58 really our theta? No. They're talking about his eyes down to whatever he's looking at on the sidewalk or whatever. So whenever you're dealing with the angle of depression, You're going to take 90 minus that angle, and that will give you your theta that you really need to use to calculate. So 90 minus 58 is what, 32? So that's the angle that we're going to use to calculate whatever this answer is. The angle of elevation is exactly whatever they tell you it is, because it's down here in the corner. But when they're talking about angle of depression, you really need to think about the line of sight down to the object. That's the angle that they're referring to when they give you 58. So just remember, angle of depression is going to be 90 minus whatever that angle is. Now think about the rest of the information that they gave us. It says the base of the ladder, okay, the ladder's over here, is 65 feet from the base of the building. Do you see how they use the word base? From here to here is 65 feet. So what are they talking about? The horizontal part or the vertical part?
Horizontal.
The horizontal part. That's what they're talking about here. And then the question is, how long is the ladder? So what am I looking for in this case? The vertical, how tall is the building? Or am I looking for how long is the ladder?
The length of the ladder.
The ladder. We're looking for my hypotenuse. So with the information that they gave us here, what is the relationship of 65 degrees and the ladder? What is 65? Is it opposite that angle? Is it adjacent to it? Is it the hypotenuse?
It's opposite.
It's opposite. Because we're talking about the angle of depression right here. And then this is the hypotenuse. So what trig function is going to use opposite and hypotenuse? Sine.
Sine.
So sine 32 equals opposite over hypotenuse. Now some of you are going to say, well, how do I know I don't have to use right triangle trig on the unit circle? Guys, is 32 degrees on the unit circle? No. Is 58 degrees on the unit circle? Is 74 degrees on the unit circle? No. In this case, you're talking about the length of something, an angle of 32 degrees. It's not on the unit circle. They're just asking you to just multiply and round. In this case, I'm going to have you guys round to the nearest foot, I think I put on the test. So 65 equals x times the sine of 32. How do you get x by itself? Divide both sides by sine 32. And in your calculators, what is 65 divided by sine 32?
118.
It's 117 point, what, like 87?
Yeah.
So if I ask you to round to the nearest foot, you would tell me 118 feet. Now, if you use the wrong trig function, if you set the problem up incorrectly, you'll probably get some wacky answer like the ladder has to be 9,000 feet long or negative something long. So just make sure that you're paying attention to what you're doing. I know somebody just sent me something in the chat, but I can't get my cursor to move it over to read the chat. Is it something you can ask me out loud? If not, I'll figure out a way to get there.
Mrs. Meadows.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Nope, we have to rationalize. Oops, I forgot to press record. Negative 765, okay? What I need you guys to see here is you have to have the negative sign, right? Negative makes a huge difference whether you tell me negative or positive. You also have to have the degree sign. So when we're converting from radians to degrees or degrees to radians, it's pi over 180, 180 over pi. Whatever we want to cancel out goes on the bottom. So in this case, I want my pi to cancel out. So 180 is going to go on top. My pi's cancel out. And then just multiply. What's 3 times 180? What is it, 540? Divided by 19. Give me 2 decimal places. What's 540 divided by 19?
42.
Okay, so 28.42 what? Degrees. Make sure you put the degree sign. Looking at the next one, it's negative. So remember, I should have a negative in my answer. But if I have a pi, I want to get that to cancel out. So I cancel out the pi's. I have negative, or 2 can go in here, what, 90 times? So it gives me negative 270 degrees. Those should be gimmies for you guys. Those are super easy. A lot of you had some issues with this on complement and supplement. Complement we should think, if we're in radians, you should think complement is pi over 2 minus. Supplement is pi minus. Guys, if it's in radians, leave it in radians. Don't give me an answer in degrees. But you have to put, if I'm trying to find the complement, the pi over 2 has to come first. Some of you switch that. The pi over 2 has to come first. If I get a common denominator between 2 and 3, it's 6. So multiply the bottom here by 3 to get 6. Multiply the top, so I have 3 pi. Multiply the bottom here by 2 to get 6. So multiply the top, so I get 2 pi. What's 3 pi minus 2 pi? 1 pi over 6. That's your complement. Now if I'm going to try and find the supplement, then I say pi minus pi over 3. Common denominator would be 3. So I multiply the bottom by 3, multiply the top by 3. I get 3 pi minus 1 pi gives me 2 pi over 3. That's your supplement. That's fine. But you have to remember the pi over 2 and the pi have to come first. So in a case like this, when I have 5 pi over 6, all right? So I have pi over 2 minus 5 pi over 6. What's the common denominator between 2 and 6? 6. 3 times 2, so I multiply the top. So I have 3 pi minus 5 pi. What's 3 minus 5?
-2.
Negative 2 pi. Can you get a negative for a complement or a supplement?
No.
No. So your answer here would be no complement. Most of you got that right on your quiz. Some of you did not. If you get a negative, your answer is none. But the pi over 2 and the pi have to come first. It's the only way you're going to get this correct, guys. So this is over 1. If I multiply by 6, I get 6. So 6 pi minus 5 pi equals 1 pi over 6. That's your supplement. All right, come here. This is not meant to be a trick question. I want to find the complement and the supplement. So pi over 2 minus 7 pi over 6. Common denominator is 6, so I multiply the bottom here by 3 and the top. I have 3 pi minus 7 pi. Negative 4 pi over 6. Is there a complement? No complement. Why?
Because it's a negative.
Because it's negative. So now I'm going to do the same thing with pi to find the supplement. 7 pi over 6. Common denominator is 6. So I have 6 pi minus 7 pi. I get negative pi over 6. Is there a supplement, guys? There's no supplement either. That's not, there was a quiz version that had that, and so many people got that wrong because you just second-guessed yourselves. Like, oh, I can't have 2 no's. Yeah, you can. This just happens to not have a complement or a supplement. All right, I'm going to go through these relatively quickly because I'm not going to do 17. I already had it worked out. But if I'm looking on my unit circle, guys, and I ask you for the trig functions, if the angle is on the unit circle, like 3 pi over 2 is right there, 0, comma, negative 1 is my ordered pair. This is my x, this is my y. Remind yourself, sine is the y value. Cosine is the x value. Tangent is y over x. So what is the sine of 3 pi over 2? What's the y value? Negative 1. What's the cosine of 3 pi over 2? What's the x value? 0. What's the tangent? Negative 1 over 0. What does that equal?
Undefined.
Thank you. Undefined. So if I have to do my cosecant, that's 1 over y. So it's 1 over negative 1, which gives me negative 1. My secant is 1 over x, which is 1 over 0, which gives me undefined, not 0. It's undefined. My cotangent is x over y. My x value is 0 over negative 1 gives me 0. When we're on the unit circle and it's a quadrant angle, meaning you have just a nice easy 1, 0, something like that, you should be able to fly through those trig functions. Now, reminder of how to do negative ones. If I want negative 2 pi over 3, the way that we figure that out is, where is positive 2 pi over 3? It's right here. So I had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. Negative tells me I go 5 spaces, but in which direction? If I want negative, which way do I go?
Down.
Down. How many spaces did I say? 5.
5.
So you're going to go from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is the ordered pair you would use. So the ordered pair that you would write down is negative 1/2, negative root 3 over 2. That's your x value, that's your y. And then you can find all 6 trig functions using these ratios. Same thing with 7 pi over 4. You'd find 7 pi over 4 is right here on the unit circle. So you would say, okay, I have square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. This is my x, this is my y, and I'd find all my values. Again, I have all this worked out. I'll show you in just a second. Last thing I want to talk about is our linear speed stuff. All right, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but linear speed is our arc length, which is r times theta over time. Whatever the revolution is that they give you, that gives you the theta and it gives you the time. So if I have a half revolution, okay, a half revolution, that's half of a circle. My theta in half of a circle is pi, and my time is 30 seconds. So you literally would write 1.72 times pi divided by 30. And in your calculator, give me the decimal. I think it's like 0.18. For a 3/4 revolution, right? That's 3/4 of a circle. My theta is 3 pi over 2. And my time would be 45 seconds. So you would write 9.48 times 3 pi over 2 divided by 45. I would work from the inside out. If you don't know how to do this with parentheses, I would multiply 3 times pi divided by 2, then multiply by 9.48, then divide by 45. A 1/4 revolution has a central angle of pi over 2, and your time would be 15 on the y over 30. So you would literally write 5.69 times pi over 2 divided by 15 and work it out. All right, lastly, guys, one quick thing I wanted to remind you of. Arc length, S equals R times theta. If they ask you to find theta in degrees, right, because it's usually in radians, if they tell you that the arc length is 18 and that your radius is 5, you have something like this. You divide both sides by 5. Some of you stopped at that point on your quiz and said, well, theta equals 18 over 5. That is in radians. I wanted to go to what? Degrees. So I would divide by 180, or multiply by 180 over pi. And when you do that, I think this is 3240. What's 18 times 180? Anybody?
3,240.
32040. Okay. And then what's 5 times pi? 15 point, I just did this. 15.707, something like that.
.707.
Thank you. 15.707. And then when you divide that out, I think you get about 206 point something degrees. You have to do that extra step, guys, because they're asking you for the angle in degrees. Super duper important. Guys, I just want to make one change on that problem. That was the latter question. And we were finding that x equals 65 divided by sine of 32. Your answer should be 122, I think 0.77. So the ladder should be about 123 feet long. So make sure you guys see that.